NXT is supposed to be WWE's developmental system, helping to grow the next generation of talent. The reason I say supposed like that is because more often than not, wrestlers who are big stars down in Florida often get shafted when moved up to the main roster. See Bo Dallas, The Ascension, Keith Lee, and so on. Sometimes though, a wrestler actually does better on Raw or SmackDown than they ever did down in the black and gold. I know, what a concept. So, who are these lucky guys and gals? Well, I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 WWE wrestlers who are more successful on the main roster than in NXT. Join us. Number 10, Carmella. Starting out as a valet is a tried and tested method of getting your foot in the door of a wrestling company. On one side, you have Lita, who began her WWE career as ringside company for S.A. Rios and later the Hardy Boys. On the other, you have Reginald. Yeah, less said there the better. Towards the Lita side of things is where you will find Carmella, who debuted as the hairdresser turned helper for Enzo Amore and Big Cass. Her NXT highlights included being part of her team's feud with Blake and Murphy for the tag titles and wrestling Bayley for the Women's Championship. She was called up to SmackDown in 2016 and quickly became one of the brand's most popular female stars. She would go on to win the first ever Women's Money in the Bank match the following year, cashing in on Charlotte the year after. Though she didn't do badly for herself down in Florida, Mella definitely gained a higher profile and won more championship gold after she graduated to the main roster. That said, down in NXT she never had to wear a gaudy face mask, dance with R-Truth, or have to look at James Ellsworth, so maybe we're wrong on this one. Number 9, Rusev. Before he was Miro in AEW or just Rusev in WWE, the Bulgarian brute was Alexander Rusev in the land of black and gold. Debuting for the brand in 2013, the Eastern European powerhouse went on to have one of the weirdest NXT careers of all time. His original manager was Sylvester Lafore, remember him? And he was once in a tag team with Scott Dawson, aka FTR's Dax Harwood, called the Fighting Legionnaires. I don't know what that means. Things picked up for Rusev when he took on real-life partner Lana as his manager. In 2014, he appeared in the Royal Rumble match before being called up full-time in April. He would continue to periodically appear down in NXT, having his last match for them in July. On the main roster, Rusev would lose his first name, but gain 2 US title runs, a popular slogan, and the love and affection of almost every wrestling fan around the world. Number 8, Elias. The modern-day Elias did a reverse Rusev when he got called up, dropping his surname instead. As the drifter Elias Samson, the guitar-wielding nomad would cut vaguely mysterious promos and beat undercard performers like Bull Dempsey and Jesse Sorensen. His winning ways would end after he started facing more established talent like Johnny Gargano and Shinsuke Nakamura before he was booted from the brand in a loser leaves NXT match against Cassius Ohno in 2017. Despite not being dynamite or anything in the ring, Elias has been given some pretty decent pushes since joining the main roster. He's appeared on several pay-per-views, challenged for championships, and who could forget when he and Kevin Owens got assaulted by boos that one time in Seattle. He may not have won any titles since his call-up, but Elias has certainly been featured far more prominently on Raw and SmackDown than he ever was in NXT. Number 7, Xavier Woods. Xavier Woods actually had a pretty damn successful career in TNA before he joined WWE's developmental system in 2010. After a few years in Florida Championship Wrestling, Woods debuted for the newly rebranded NXT in late 2012. He had actually had a handful of non-televised matches beforehand, the first of which was against none other than Big E Langston. Neat. Woods' final NXT match for a long time was in June 2013. Just a few months later, he was on the main roster as the tag team partner for R-Truth. And you all know what happened next. Woods toiled for a bit, got together with Big E and Kofi Kingston, formed the New Day, learned to play the trombone, and became 1/3 of one of the most celebrated and decorated stables in the history of WWE. In the decades since his call-up, Woods has become a vital part of the WWE landscape. Though he didn't really have much time to achieve anything in NXT, nobody was expecting the nerdy college kid to go quite as far as he did. Number 6, Solo Sakoa. A very recent call-up at the time of recording, Solo Sakoa shocked the world when he saved Roman Reigns' world title reign at Clash at the Castle. Since rescuing his cousin from Drew McIntyre that night in Wales, Sakoa has been a valued member of the Bloodline and has enjoyed a quasi-main event status as a result. He very rarely loses on the main roster and has had multiple great matches both on his own and alongside his brothers, the Usos. You got any more kids, Rikishi? The ones we've seen so far have been great. Solo signed his WWE contract in August 2021 and made his NXT debut at that year's Halloween Havoc. He was originally a good guy, which seems bonkers now, and had his first major feud with Boa that culminated in a Falls Count Anywhere match in January 2022. He certainly wasn't bad in NXT by any means, but making your main roster debut as part of a pay-per-view main event and then joining one of the most dominant factions of the last decade? You can't really argue with that, can you? Number 5, Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt was actually on the WWE main roster before he was ever in NXT. Husky Harris? The Nexus? Yeah, you remember. After getting repackaged as a swamp-dwelling cult leader with a penchant for straw hats, Wyatt turned up in NXT in July 2012. He got injured shortly thereafter, but this didn't stop him from appearing on TV alongside his new followers Luke Harper and Eric Rowan. As a trio, the Wyatt family got called up to the main roster in the run-up to SummerSlam 2013. What followed has been a proper roller coaster for Bray as he's flip-flopped between fan favourite and scourge ever since. People loved him as WWE champion, but they hated his matches with Randy Orton. People loved him as The Fiend, but they hated him with Uncle Howdy. Honestly, you lot can be so fickle. In spite of these inconsistencies, Wyatt has achieved far more on the main roster than he did down in the black and gold. He's a multi-time world champion, he's main evented countless big shows, and created some of the most memorable segments in recent years. By the way, memorable doesn't always mean good, but it is something. Number 4, Alexa Bliss. Much like Carmella, Alexa Bliss also rose to prominence down in NXT as the manager of a tag team. Alongside Wesley Blake and Buddy Murphy, Bliss gained notoriety as a devious heel who was willing to do anything it took to make sure her boys won the day. She actually had been a wrestler prior to this, but her character was a glitter fairy, so let's just move on. After Blake and Murphy went their separate ways, Bliss started performing on her own in the women's division. She challenged Bayley once for the NXT women's title and was then called up to the main roster in the 2016 draft. The goddess hasn't looked back since that day, going on an absolute tear. She became the first person to win both the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships, has been a tag team champion 3 times, won Money in the Bank, and once had black goo run down her face at WrestleMania. So very illustrious. Bliss turned into a bona fide superstar after leaving NXT, which is absolutely insane when you consider that her finisher used to be called the Sparkle Splash. Number 3, Bianca Belair. From an afterthought debut following WrestleMania 36 to winning the Royal Rumble to closing out Night 1 of Mania 37, Belair's journey to the top of WWE's women's division has been hard-fought and an utter joy to watch. Not only is she a former WrestleMania main eventer, but she's also a 2-time women's champion with her Raw women's title reign lasting over a year. She is not only one of the biggest female stars in the company, but she's also one of their biggest stars full stop. Also, she's married to Montez Ford. What a hunk. Belair came to many people's attention as part of the 2017 Mae Young Classic and then went on a strong undefeated run down in NXT. This came to an end when she failed to beat Shayna Baszler for the Women's Championship at TakeOver Phoenix. She would stick around in the title picture until departing the brand in 2020, so she didn't have a bad run by any stretch. However, when you consider just how big a star she has become on the main roster, you have to give that part of her career some major props. Number 2, Baron Corbin. The tale of Baron Corbin, a story of triumph, misery, and waistcoats. As the Lone Wolf, he was one of the standout stars of NXT from 2014 to 2016, a time many consider the promotion's golden era. He rubbed elbows with some big names, Rhino, Samoa Joe, Sami Zayn, and Austin Aries, to name but a few. His main roster debut took place at WrestleMania 32, where he won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. In his first night out of developmental, he had already won more trophies than he ever did in NXT. Over the next few years, Corbin rose from mid-card heel to Money in the Bank winner to actual main eventer. Were the fans happy with this trajectory? Absolutely not, but it happened. He would eventually be given the rub of retiring Kurt Bloody Angle at WrestleMania. Oh god, please don't make me think about that match again. Inconsistent matches to one side, Corbin has been part of so many major storylines and moments on the main roster that we had to include him in the festivities here. Now please put down your pitchforks and flaming torches. Number 1, Becky Lynch. Arguably, the most important thing NXT ever did was give women's wrestling in WWE the proper platform it was in desperate need of. At the forefront of that movement were the fabled 4 horsewomen: Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks, Bayley, and Becky Lynch. In NXT, 3 of those 4 women won the promotion's top prize, and 2 of them headlined a takeover. Unfortunately, Becky Lynch fits into neither of those categories. For the longest time, Lynch was seen by many as the forgotten horsewoman, the one that everybody liked but nobody truly loved. However, that all changed one special night in 2018. After ditching her go-getting attitude and becoming the man, Lynch has completely turned a corner. Her explosion in popularity helped pave the way for her, Charlotte Flair, and Ronda Rousey to main event WrestleMania 35, and she's been considered a top name ever since. Lynch had her moments in NXT, challenging for the women's title on a few occasions and all that, but nobody could have predicted what was to come for that red-headed steampunk. Through grit, determination, and radiant likability, Becky Lynch went from undesirable to ungoddamn deniable. Oh wait, that's somebody else's phrase. You get the idea though. Becky Lynch rules.